Yeah, that's awesome. So what I wanted to do before we start is just kind of do a brief roundtable. Just each of us will introduce ourselves, say our role at SQPN, and then just say something fun or nerdy that you like. No pressure, whether it's a favorite movie or just anything else you want to help the audience get to know you a little better. Why don't we start with you, Dom?
So I'm Dom Bettinelli, and I am the CEO at StarQuest. I also appear on many of the programs, Secrets of Doctor Who, Secrets of Star Trek, Secrets of Technology, Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World,
Secrets of movies and TV shows.
Secrets of movies and TV shows. I'm probably missing something, but I've been with StarQuest for over a decade now. I started as a co-host, and now I eventually came on as a full-time job and running the place now. And it is the most wonderful possible thing that God could have called me to, besides my family, as a work vocation. I'm really excited by that. All right, so my favorite movie, can't pick one. It's like kids,
Yeah.
So I will name a couple. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars. These are just the first ones, Star Wars and Empire, Return of the Jedi. So the first trilogy, and gosh, old Westerns. I mean, I love old Westerns. That's probably the one thing what we really haven't done a lot of on StarQuest yet.
Yeah. We need to start doing some Westerns. Yeah, that'd be exciting.
Oh, and fun nerdy fact, I am in the acknowledgments of Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code.
Oh, that's right.
How did you swing that?
Not by name, but he I used to work for Catholic World News, which is over at catholicculture.org now. But back in the day, he must have used our service for research of some sort. We were really one of the only online Catholic news services back in the day. So he thanked us, which was what both Phil Lawler and I were kind of looked at each other and goes, well, that's weird. I'm not sure how I feel about that. So that's my nerdy fact.
That's fun. Angela, how about you? Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
All right. Well, speaking of Westerns, bring in the Texan. My name is Angela Ciolana. I have been with StarQuest as a host and panelist since 2013. And the shows I've appeared on, besides our flagship show, Catholic Weekend and Let's Talk, are generally secrets of movies and TV shows, and mostly secrets of Star Wars. So I am a big Star Wars nerd. But I would actually say my favorite movie is probably The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And a fun nerdy fact about myself is that for my university level speech communications class, I gave a speech about Led Zeppelin. So
nice.
Right on.
Very cool. Okay, Robert.
Yeah, my name is Robert King. I am a host at SQPN. I've only been there a little over a year now. So I think I'm the new kid on the block here. I primarily host Secrets of Star Wars, but I occasionally branch out to something else, usually Secrets of Movies and TV. Favorite movie. I'm gonna, just pure favorite, I got to go with Casablanca, which is, I don't know, maybe in my opinion, the perfect movie. It's got just about everything that I want in a movie. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna stop there. And nerdy fact, I am working on a bit of Star Wars cosplay, and I just got my first lightsaber.
Nice.
So I'm planning to customize it. I got the simplest lightsaber I could, just so that I could customize it properly.
Wow,
nice.
So.
Well, I am Thomas Salerno. I've been with StarQuest since 2021, I think. Started out on Secrets of Movies and TV, and now I'm one of the hosts of The Secrets of Middle Earth. I'm also a host and panelist on Secrets of Star Wars, and I think I was a guest once or twice on Secrets of Sacred Art, which was fun. My favorite movie of all time, hands down, is Jurassic Park. I saw that film when I was 5 years old in the theater. So I'm dating myself there, but that movie knocked me flat, and I just loved it. And when I was a little bit older, I saw we had that old VHS tape, The Making of Jurassic Park, and that convinced me that Steven Spielberg had the coolest job in the world, and he was like my hero from then on. Fun nerdy fact about myself: when in my senior year in high school, we did a stage production of C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters, and I was Screwtape.
Wow.
Fun.
The truth comes out.
Yeah. I think I've shared the photos on our SQPN Discord before, but I have photos of me in my full demonic Screwtape regalia.
Thomas, can I just add one thing about the Jurassic Park thing? When I went, I was much older. There was a dad and his son, probably about 8, somewhere around there, sitting behind me. And when the dinosaur ate the lawyer, spoilers, when the dinosaur ate the lawyer, I heard the dad lean over to the son and say, "Now you know what Barney's really like."
Oh, no.
Right.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you just bought yourself years of therapy.
Oh, the chat loved that. That was great. Yeah. So tonight we're talking about echoes of faith in secular storytelling, movies, books, television shows, and I think we agreed to start out kind of with The Mandalorian, both because it's on the artwork for this panel, and also just because I think The Mandalorian was really remarkable in being like this Star Wars streaming series that came out that had so much resonance and themes that we as Catholics can engage with. So I just want to throw out there to the panel just as like a general, what did you guys think of that? Well, when like The Mandalorian, was first coming out, did you immediately start to pick up on these themes?
I don't know how you couldn't.
Yeah.
I would say not initially, although when we get introduced to the way, the children of the watch, it started to get those overtones, but I felt like it built over time into season 2, 2.5, and since season 3, which I actually just started rewatching last night, because I just listened to our Secrets of Star Wars episodes on it. I was on a long trip and I was listening to some of our content, and it was so religious. So and it came up in a lot of those discussions on the podcast. So Jewish and like resonant of the Old Testament. So I really felt like it built, but I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily think of it as having a lot of those overtones in that first season, but.
Well, I picked up on it in the first season through the covert, the way, and especially the armorer as a priestess figure. She was, all the Mandalorians would go out and find Beskar, bring it in to submit it to the armorer as it's almost like it was a ritual, but it was almost sacramental in a way because it was part of their spirituality of the kind of contributing as a community to all that is needed for their community to survive, for their way to continue. And there were a lot of spiritual, just the way that they spoke to one another, right? The dialogue was filled with this mythos, and that in itself, along with the relationships that they had, and particularly the central character of Din Djarin, I felt like was so committed to the way and all of the different rituals and acts and the creed. Of course, that built, like you said, over time, but just his devotion, I would say. A lot of people would use that word as they were talking about this show, to describe his relationship with the way and the way of the Mandalore. So just really, yeah, I picked up on that right away. And of course, we got into right and purity and talking about, you know, sacraments, baptism, ritual bathing, purification,
Hmm.
pilgrimage, all those things. So it was so much fun to talk about on the show.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I was getting similar to you, Angela. I was getting, This Is the Way came out very early, and of course the way is one of the earliest terms for Christianity. And I was definitely getting catacomb vibes from the covert. But I didn't really get like specifically Catholic vibes from it until they talked about, the need for redemption and bathing in the living water, and being faithful to the creed. And I mean, I still I go to a church, I dip my fingers in the holy water, and I bathe in the living water, and I will be faithful to the creed. It's like it's that show is in a way like informing my own faith now, because of how like directly it connects with the ideas of baptism and repentance and faithfulness. One of the other things that I really loved about the show was it brought up the question of, who is a true Mandalorian? And this is a question one of the other things I volunteer with is an ecumenical fan convention. So it's we look at the intersection of faith and fandom, but it's open to all Christians, and so it's not specifically Catholic. And we have a lot of conversations about, what do we mean by Christian? What do we mean by faith-based when we're talking about, our programming and things like that? And it's like, we've got a lot in common. We've got a lot of differences. We have things we might want to fight about. We have, other things that we want to stand back to back and stand together for. And seeing that dynamic in the show was also really interesting to see it, that idea of like diversity in their religious notion and how they dealt with it. Sometimes well and sometimes badly. So.
Yeah, well, you had, like, for example, Bo-Katan, who was a Cradle Mandalorian, and in the third season, she is with Din Djarin, who was a foundling. So he was someone who was brought into the faith as a child, and so they're walking together. And Din is very devoted, like I was mentioning. Bo-Katan is actually a princess of the Mandalorian people, but she is jaded. She has seen all of the ritual and the recitation of the creed, the way, as empty show. It's performative. And so you get those dynamics of, someone who has grown up in a faith, in a culture, and around these rituals, and takes it for granted, or, just doesn't get the depth of the spirituality and that spiritual connection and relationship to it, versus Din, who came in from the outside and really embraced it and just dove headfirst. And he was teaching her sort of like how to reconnect with that.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, Bo-Katan was teaching Din about, maybe not being so by the letter, but more of the spirit of the letter. And so that was really interesting as well, because people of faith talk about that. So kind of to dovetail off of what you were saying, Robert.
Yeah, it's like I think I really started to pay closer attention to that show because of what I thought was a throwaway joke very early on, and that's I think it's in the second or third episode where Din says something to the effect of, where he says weapons are part of my religion. And I thought that, okay, like, I'm like, haha, that's funny. But then as the show went on, I'm like, oh, he was really serious about that. Second,
Yes.
like, wow, they are taking the idea of faith and cultic practice and creed, these ideas really seriously in this show, and in a way that Star Wars had really never done before, because I feel like, of course we, it's pretty common knowledge that Star Wars takes a lot of inspiration from multiple strands of religious traditions, from the East, from Buddhism, from Taoism, from ancient mythologies from all over the world. But this was like the first time where I really felt as a Christian, as a Catholic, like, okay, wow, they are really engaging with ideas that are more central or unique to my own faith tradition and faith experience. And I just found that to be, just remarkable for a Star Wars show or for a sci-fi fantasy show in general. It was taking these ideas seriously rather than trying to like undermine them or make fun of them or anything like that. And I just couldn't I can't thank the writers enough for engaging with these ideas seriously, because you have to, as in good writing, like, human beings are religious, are spiritual, and so you have to grapple with these ideas in an intelligent and fair way. And I really think this show did that.
It would be easy in Star Wars to just like shove all of the spiritual into the Force. That it's all about, when spirituality comes up, it's about the Force. And they didn't do that. They had something very different here. And what even more, they show a diversity of belief within a culture, which is also another thing. It's a bit of a trope in sci-fi, is you have mono environments. It's an ice planet. It's a desert planet. Like,
Yes.
What is Earth? Earth is I guess it's a water planet, but we have everything, and cultures are often the same way in sci-fi, where they're just one thing. And here we have, what we had seen established in prior canon was the Mandalorians, and they walk around with their helmets on and off and whatnot here and there. And then suddenly we were introduced to these people who they don't take their helmet off. And I remember thinking, well, that's new. Did something in the intervening years change about them? But no, they were an offshoot, a strain of Mandalorian belief that was more rigorous. And I really applaud them for letting things get complex, for introducing complexity and not spoon feeding the audience. And I think it's one of the reasons why, apart from Grogu, why The Mandalorian was so popular, is because it, like Andor is also so popular, because it both of those shows really treat the audience with respect, I think.
Yeah, and it's that treating the audience with respect, and, like you say, not either talking down to them, trying to lecture them, or spoon feeding them, which is like, yeah, it just makes the series so more enjoyable to watch and so much more interesting to process and talk about and just have these discussions about it, and I don't know, like, there's these themes that we've mentioned, and then there's also like some of the imagery which might be unintentional, might be not. I mean, like, a lot of people online pointed out that that Mando and Grogu, there's like very much Saint Joseph and the Christ Child imagery, or Saint Christopher and the Christ Child imagery. So even in that really strong tie of family in the Mandalorian, both family in terms of like as a culture, and also just found family, that Din Djarin essentially adopts Grogu as his son, was such an edifying thing, to see in popular entertainment, and I know that the whole, wolf and cub thing is not original to the Mandalorian, but it does it so well.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah, was there any other specifically Christian or Catholic imagery about Mando or the Mandalorian series? Or maybe a better question would be, I mean, we know we're getting more, like maybe not another season of the show, but I know there's a movie or movies, I don't know, planned in the future. How would you like to see them explore some of these ideas or themes in the future with these characters?
I think with where they left season 3 with Mandalorian, you had a very interesting evolution of both the Children of the Watch and the, should we say, the more mainstream Mandalorians under Bo-Katan, where the armorer gave permission to Bo-Katan to take her helmet off, to that she's not, like, at one point Mando had told her, Din Djarin had told her, you're not a Mandalorian, you take your helmet off. You're not a Catholic, because you don't go the kind of liturgy that I prefer. So the armorer kind of says, no, she's still a Mandalorian, but she has to be in the world, in the, if you want to use Catholic speak, and has to operate in the world in a different way than we do. And I'd like to see them explore more of how the Mandalorians, how their faith has evolves in the sense of, or the doctrine develops, so that they can be reunited, so they become more of a one people again. Because really that's where we're going, right? The whole idea is that the Mandalorians can be brought together as one.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like that monastic strain of Christianity versus the more, go out and be in the world, mendicant,
Apostolic.
an apostolic, strain of Christianity, where it's
The
like
active
they don't,
life, yes.
the active versus the contemplative. Yeah, it's like where they don't oppose one another. It's both and. You can have both. You could be both types of life, both vocations, and be authentically Catholic. So I think we understand that seeming dichotomy in Mandalorian culture quite well. Yeah.
My fear about that is that they might turn it into like this Game of Thrones-esque political machinations, just getting more and more vicious and complex. But what I would love to see is I would love to see I guess two things. First off, as you said, Bo-Katan and the armorer kind of proceeding together and each kind of learning from the other how to be more Mandalorian than they were before, like exploring the depths of their spirituality in that sense. And I would love to see Din Djarin and Grogu again. More hijinks and shenanigans would be fun, but what I really want to see is that I thought the best part of Din Djarin was when he struggled to pass on what he knew of his culture to Grogu, and like just that pure fatherly vibe is something that's really fascinating and kind of missing in a lot of media today.
That's a good point. I think also one of the reasons that this series has resonated with people so deeply is because whether someone believes or doesn't believe in a faith tradition, everyone has an opinion about it. Everyone has a relationship with it. Everyone has experiences with religion, faith, traditions, even if they were raised in a secular household, they still have opinions and experiences of kind of intermingling with folks who have different backgrounds. And so these are all, I guess, experiences that are so deeply intimate, right? Like they're really tied up with these questions that human beings have, this search that human beings have from the depths of our soul. And so to see, for example, Grogu becoming more Mandalorian, I would like to also see Din Djarin kind of grapple with the Force. And I know we've seen him
Mhm.
witness Grogu doing many extraordinary things, but what does he really like? How does he encounter the Force as an entity or the Force, right? What kind of spiritual impact might that have on him and the other Mandalorians? So that's something, just the intermingling of the different traditions and the different backgrounds and cultures. I'm really curious to see now that I think Din kind of has his footing in his own identity, to really, how do you then interact with the rest of the world, right? And same thing for the other kind of Mandalorians as well. How do they bring in now the faithful, and how do they interact with them as they move forward?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very interested to see now that they've sort of reclaimed their planet, the land of promise, almost
Indeed.
their promised land, the planet Mandalore. It's almost like now I want to see them. We saw the beginnings at the very end of season 3 of them, relighting the Great Forge and rebuilding their society, and I want to see them go out now. I want to see them, explore more of what it means to be a Mandalorian in the galaxy. The, that can't just always mean just being a bounty hunter or a mercenary. There has to be other ways of being Mandalorian. And because like you mentioned, Dom, it can't just be a monolithic culture where everyone's the same. And so I'm very interested to see, just like they've explored different ways of being a Jedi, in recent media and books and films and TV shows. So I'm very, even Jedi who are called to certain things, like something they've introduced recently is this way seeker vocation that certain Jedis have to just go out into the galaxy as a knight errant and like not so much doing what the council does, but just letting the will of the Force guide them to the people that need to be helped. These different there's different Jedi vocations. I'd like to see different Mandalorian vocations in the future.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to have like a pure like focus on we are warriors. This is the whole part of our culture. You want something more rich and complex and developed, like say the Klingons from Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah. Love the Klingons.
Yeah.
But I know that we're all very eager to we could talk about Star Wars all night, but I know we're very this isn't the secrets of Star Wars though. We're very eager to share some of our own examples of movies that we and television shows that we love, both from the past and the recent past and the present, that have talked about these different faith ideas. So maybe we could just go around the panel and share one. Robert, let's start with you. I know you have a lot of examples on your notes.
Yeah, well, and I'm last on the list of your outline, so I was like, oh, I'll probably be going last. So, so I thought, oh, I'm going to take a different approach from everyone else. Everyone else is going to talk about, where faith shows up in movies and TV shows and things like that, or books and such. And I was going to say, one of the things I'm really deeply interested in is stories that ask questions of faith when maybe even the author doesn't have a strong faith themselves, or isn't grounded in a faith, or doesn't have a creed that they adhere to say nothing of being Catholic. And so, yeah, like Casablanca, I mentioned, is probably my favorite film of all time. And it's just asking this very fundamental and fundamentally Catholic question of how can we be good people in a world that is so corrupt and broken, and as we would say, corrupted and broken by original sin. And it's just like an examination of how do we do what's right? How do we know what's right in a world that's corrupted by original sin? And I've got bunches of other, movies I can talk about, but it's not my panel, so
Dom, what about you? I'm sure you've got some great insights on this.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight a show that I've just watched the first season of recently, which is the new Shogun on FX, which is a phenomenal production. They've won many awards, and rightly so. And there's explicit faith in this episode, in this story, because if anyone's familiar with the story of Japan in this era, it's around the 1700s, the 18th century or so, and there are Christian missionaries in Japan, starting with the Portuguese Jesuits who are there, and they're in this story, and you see the conflict in faith. The one of the main characters, Mariko, she's a Japanese samurai, but she has a dual obligations to her honor and her clan, but also to God and her soul. And she's torn, because the obligations to her honor and to her clan call her to, well, she feels the call to commit seppuku, the ritual suicide, to satisfy honor. But yet to do so would be a violation of what God calls us to. And so you do see her wrestle with this. And it's kind of funny because the Europeans are not as good at Christians as this Japanese convert is. You have Anjin, Blackthorn, the English pilot who comes and throws a wrench into the plans of the Portuguese Jesuits, and you have the Portuguese Jesuits who have really gotten deeply involved in the political structures, and you get a real sense, and it's a bit tropey, but it's also a little true to life in the history, that they got a little too concerned with the politics and not as much about the saving of the souls as they should have been. But you have this one character, and she's walking this line throughout the story, and she doesn't always land on from a Christian point of view on the right side of it. But I find it's a fascinating look, and it doesn't do the thing you might expect of secular, sometimes out of secular storytelling. It doesn't just say, religion is a bunch of hypocrites. That would have been very easy to do because, frankly, there were a bunch of hypocrites in history in this period. But it takes a faith seriously in this, and I really enjoyed that. And to see her faith play out, and how it maybe affects others within the story, as we'll see in a future season.
I really need to watch that show. Hearing you describe it now really makes me want to watch it.
It's so well done. The acting is phenomenal. They all of the Japanese actors are speaking Japanese. It's directed by Japanese directors as well as American directors, so you have a real sense of and it's written by Japanese writers, so you get a real sense of the Japanese culture. This is a Japanese way of looking at these stories, and so it's so really well done, I have to say.
Awesome. So what about you, Angela? What's your movie of choice?
Yeah, well, I was trying to think about this from a writer's perspective. And how do you bring in, again, those questions that we all want to know the answers to as human beings into your story? And for me, a movie that sticks out that probably could have been one of my picks for a favorite movie is also a popcorn movie, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which I think does a really wonderful job of incorporating the indigenous spiritual exploration, right? So going back to our ancient ancestors and what questions and what stories, what mythos do they have that I think just echo through the generations, right? So it's able to speak to us on a deeper level, even us really modern people, particularly looking at, in this case, the African American, and Latin cultures, For me, I have a background in primarily of those in the Latin culture, the Mexican indigenous culture, and so um, having the character of Namor in this case, yes, there are scenes with, like, I guess Franciscans, I don't know, they were dressed like Franciscans in the movie, but that actually wasn't, like, the spiritual part of the movie. I think the spiritual part of the movie was the struggle of the two primary characters, right, Namor and Shuri, to deal with their suffering, right? And that's a very spiritual topic, right? How do you deal with suffering? How do you grieve? And especially for Shuri, who is identified with technology, right? That's something that we can all relate to, having technology constantly around you. And for her to not know how to grieve the loss of her brother and her father and then her mother, spoiler alert, I guess. um, but you know, having these experiences where, for example, she's sitting on the riverbank with her mother Ramonda, and her mother's trying to tell her, like, how do you grieve? You have to take time to grieve. You have to listen, right, to yourself and process your memories and your feelings. And she's thinking about spiritual and what makes us human, right? The full experience of being human. But Shuri is very rational, right? Going back to her reliance on technology, and she doesn't believe in all the spiritual stuff per se. But as time goes on, and she encounters more suffering, she encounters more of herself, and there's this beautiful vehicle that they have in the Black Panther movies of the ancestral plane, right? Where the Black Panther will go to this ancestral plane. It's like a mystical experience and encounter their ancestors and receive some sort of wisdom that they bring back with them. And for Shuri, her ancestral plane experience is very jarring because it's a, an experience with her cousin who was very violent and uh, had a
Had been
retributive
the
sort
villain of the
of.
last movie.
Yes, he was the villain of the last movie, and
Yeah.
she was ashamed when she came out of the ancestral plane, right? So to have all of that, right, tied up into her story, and then bringing in Namor, who is referred to as Kukulkan, which is the feather serpent god. For me, as someone with Mexican heritage, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's Quetzalcoatl, which is the Nahuatl word for feather serpent god. And the idea of the feather serpent god is very tied to the Christian um, religion, in the sense that this is what you can become if you are spiritually free, if you're self-actualized, right? So becoming the Quetzalcoatl, like, everybody can become the Quetzalcoatl. And so as it's going through the story, you see that actually it's not Namor who is called Kukulkan. It's not really him who becomes free spiritually. It's really Shuri who becomes that feather serpent god in a way. And so for her to process her pain, to process her experiences, to understand what is the relationship between love and suffering and your spirit. To me, that was beautiful, the way that they mined those ancient traditions and brought them into um really it's a superhero story, but it's a human story. It's a very human experience that everybody goes through, right? Suffering and grief. So I loved the movie for that reason.
Wow, that's fascinating. That, and sadly, it's one of the few Marvel movies I haven't seen yet. I just, not for any particular reason, just because I haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, no, I'm definitely, when I watch it, I'm definitely gonna have these things in mind. it will sure make my experience a lot richer. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah, you're welcome. Highly recommend it.
I think the movie I'm going to highlight is another Japanese production, and it's one that we've spoken about recently on Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, and that's Godzilla Minus One, which I just heard today will be coming back to theaters.
Oh, really?
Good, because I
Yes,
haven't seen it.
with extra content, apparently. And I
Ooh.
believe both Minus One and its decolorized version, Minus Color, will also be returning. But I'm as anyone who's listened to our shows at SQPN knows, I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan. But when I came out of Minus One, I knew I had seen something pretty extraordinary. I immediately just went home and started outlining my movie review. I needed to get this out of me. It's not, because it's not just a monster movie. It's a human drama, and it really focuses on what the human characters are going through in the midst of this incredible disaster that they have no control over. And what the themes that really struck me is that it was such a life affirming film at a time in history where I think we really need that, and we need more films like that. Because from the very first scene, spoilers, if you haven't seen it, but well, Robert, you haven't seen it. I don't want to ruin the whole movie. Okay. So the film starts out with a kamikaze pilot who doesn't go through with it. And you follow his journey through the whole film, his feelings of guilt that he has not done his duty, of survivor's guilt that he's survived the war when so many other Japanese men have died, and people at home, women and children, have died in the horrific Allied fire bombings of Japanese cities and the atomic bombs. There's a scene at about the midpoint of the film where I forgot I was watching a movie with subtitles. It was that emotionally compelling. And it's where the main character goes through essentially an episode of depersonalization. He starts to believe he's not alive, that he's a ghost, that he couldn't possibly have survived. I'm a ghost, he keeps saying. And he just has the performance was, I think, an Oscar-worthy performance. It was so real. It was so raw. But he learns to accept. The whole movie is a journey about this character learning to accept what's happened to him and learning to live and learning to inspire other people to live. He has this platonic relationship with a woman he meets in the wreckage of Tokyo, and a child an orphan child that they raise together. He has these friends that he meets on a minesweeper boat. That's his new job, is getting mines out of Tokyo Bay. And when Godzilla arrives, it flashes back to him these memories of the war, not only of him refusing to go through with his kamikaze mission, but he actually encountered a non-atomic version of Godzilla earlier in the war. So he begins a quest of vengeance against Godzilla, and of I'm finally going to sacrifice myself to this thing that I didn't do during the war that I'm ashamed of. And he learns by the end of the movie to let go of this shame, to let go of this guilt, and to live for the people he loves. There's a great scene where a lot of the Japanese, because the Japanese military has essentially been defeated by Godzilla, and a lot of the civilians, scientists and engineers and even ordinary people come up with these ideas for how to defeat Godzilla. And there's a former military scientist who says, during the war, the regime treated human life cheaply. They just threw men away, either as kamikaze pilots or in these bonsai charges where men, they would just send men without ammunition and just bayonets to be mowed down by American machine guns. He's like, we need to stop fighting to the death and we need to stop. We need to start fighting to live. And that was such a, and that's the lodestone of the movie. And I think that was just so powerful. It transcended the film above just a monster movie or a sci-fi movie to just a great film. And there were so many themes in it of life and learning to process guilt and to grieve, but then to move on and to be the, as what one of the church fathers said, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. And to just be to be fully alive, I think that was the guiding theme of the film. And I just thought that Christianity and religion is really not mentioned in the film, but it's saturated with these themes, which just made it so compelling. I don't know if anyone else has seen it, but
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It is interesting. I mean, it's a Godzilla movie, but Godzilla in the movie is just a force of nature. It's like if the setting was a hurricane, on the Gulf Coast, or something along those lines, it would be similar, and it would be one man trying to cope with his interior battles and this exterior force. And Godzilla in the movie is sort of I feel like it represents that interior monster in him that wants to destroy him, that he feels like should destroy him because of his failures and his shame and the loss that has occurred. And I really liked about this movie too, like it is a Japanese production about a period of history in Japan that the Japanese people have had to struggle with and come to terms with what their country did in that time period. And I felt like it was a really great insight into the Japanese mindset about who they are, in how they have since struggled with the ramifications and become perhaps more in touch with that spiritual side of themselves, that the spirit in their culture of that, dealing with the violence that came out of it. And it's interesting to actually think about the connection between Shogun and Godzilla, and to see that progression in that. I mean, Japan is not alone. Europe has had to deal with similar, violence connected to religion and that sort of thing. But I really thought it was a fascinating look into that interior struggle that the Japanese people had in dealing with the aftermath of World War II. So I agree, it was a fantastic movie. I mean, it almost sells it short to sell it as a monster movie, because it's it's a human movie. It really is.
Yes, it definitely is 100%. It won Godzilla finally his Oscar after all these decades. Like I was so edified by that, and just even to see the reaction of the crew to being nominated, like they filmed their live reaction, and I was sitting and they were nominated and won for visual effects. And it was so well deserved, and I just felt so glad for these people.
It was a shame watching him stomp all over the stage at the Oscar ceremony, though.
Yeah.
Like all the people got squished. It was, I felt bad, but at least they got him, a full size Oscar.
Well, I think that's a good point for us to wrap things up. But before we do, I was just wondering if any of you guys had anything you want to plug, newsletters, websites, stuff like that, where people can find you and maybe see some of your creative work, if that's a thing you're into.
Or if anyone in the audience had questions about anything, like I know you've been posting stuff in the chat, which is, I think, adds a lot to it. But if I could once again just plug our work at SQPN, sqpn.com, all the podcasts we do there. You can hear a lot more from Angela on the secrets of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, where she goes into more depth, and we have great contributions by the other panelists in that as well. So definitely, go and check out our back catalog where we've talked about a lot of these things already. I don't know that did we do a Secrets of Casablanca? If not, that should go on the list.
Yes,
I think it's on the list. I don't think we've recorded it yet.
Okay, it needs to be done.
Yeah.
So definitely check out sqpn.com. We do have a newsletter. It's a very low volume newsletter. It basically just kind of tells you what's going on with the shows. Yeah, that's all I would have to plug. If anyone else has anything they want to say. Angela,
if you
should plug your Substack.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
Substack. So I have a couple of Substacks. You can find me on Substack at inspiredangela.substack.com or theinspiredlife.substack.com. Either one of those. Just look up Inspired and Angela and you'll find me. But I try to write about these themes of finding spirituality in secular culture, connecting it with secular culture and daily life experiences.
It's really good.
Yes, I can second that. Love Angela's content. Love it.
Yeah.
And Thomas, your Substack, which
Yes.
you need to get back into.
Yes, no, that is part of my goal for next year is to improve my Substack and keep it going. But my Substack is page turning, which you can find at thomasjsalerno.substack.com. Right now I'm doing monthly posts, which round up my various writing and podcasting adventures. But I also do original essays, which, yes, I want to do more of on the Substack. I have a lot of plans for that. It's just time. I need time. So, so yes,
Hermione's
lots of
time
plans
turner.
for that. Yeah, that's what I need. Robert, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
I've got a lot of irons in the fire. Nothing's quite ready yet, but I will give some contact for the fan convention that I help out with. It's called Doxacon Seattle. That's DOXACON Seattle.com. We're actually sort of an offshoot from an East Coast convention, doxacon.org, that happens in the Washington, D.C. area at an Orthodox church. I think they've been holding their convention at the Catholic University campus lately. But our convention on the West Coast in Seattle is going to be this coming February. So if you're in town, please drop by. We're going to have a great time.
Great. Yeah, that would be cool. What time of year is that again? I'm sorry.
February.
February.
February 8th.
Night.
2025.
The day before my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. Yeah.
In several months. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. This has been great. And thank you, everybody, who has stopped by and listened. I thought this was a great panel. If anybody in the chat has any questions about SQPN or just would like to ask us questions, we'd be glad to field questions from you. So feel free to drop those in the chat. Oh, and we're getting lots of applause emojis. That's fun.
Thank you.